So I assert that in life, in business, and in science, that everybody lives by selling something. You might not like to hear the word selling associated with science and technology, but over the next few minutes I'm going to demonstrate to you how you actually have to sell your ideas to other people and you have to help them to buy. So we exist here at Argonne because someone has bought the idea that we need to have a top-notch technical capability that serves the nation, its competitiveness, and its national security, and that perhaps at some time we need to call to action a tremendous quantity of skilled scientists ready to put their minds to work on a specific technical challenge. We don't know what that is yet, but we're ready. So that's a sale. Somebody actually allocates money to pay your salary. They believe that they've made the right decision, and you're part of that. We're all part of that. So let's just take an example that we heard earlier about Launchpad, right? So Launchpad is an idea where ideas were solicited. People came forward with specific concepts. They had to describe those ideas to people who were evaluating those ideas. They had to get through a process. There were a number of things that happened in that process. Let's just take a look at what actually happens. Everybody who buys something goes through this sequence of actions. So the initial solicitation for Launchpad said, if you have an idea, come talk to us, right? We're looking for funding. We're looking to fund new ideas. So people were curious. Some people raised their hand and said, I want to be part of that. They prepared a short proposal. Then they had to begin to help other people to buy, the people who were evaluating ideas. They had to demonstrate their ability to communicate that by getting them involved and interested, allowing people to see the value in what they were proposing. They had to win their confidence that they had the skill, background education, personal motivations to actually execute on what they were proposing. They had to overcome some problems, right? So there might be some duplication in other laboratories, for example, and they had to propose a resolution to that. No, it's not the same. We're doing something different than somebody else. And then there's other problems. Well, I don't have any time to pursue anything that's outside of what I'm currently paid for. And then there's a resolution that's proposed by, Science, Technology, Partnership, and Outreach. I can't say the acronym. That is, we'll pay 50% of your costs for a year. Okay, so that frees up my time. It's very interesting. And then there's an objection that might occur from that person's manager. Said, oh, no, that person's too valuable, and that has to be managed somehow. Finally, there's a decision that the person is accepted into the program, and they execute the program. Think of all the different sales that had to be made. You had to sell the individual to come forward and present their idea. That person then had to convince the evaluators, 4 of them, to buy their idea and to support them. Their manager had to be convinced that this was a good thing to develop a person. The Department of Energy had to say, somebody had to propose this and say, yeah, I would support that type of approach and provide some of our funding for this personal development. Okay, so you can see now that people go through this process. Let me make it a little bit more real. I'll give you 3 more examples, assuming I can remember them. The first is the shirt on my back, right? So I read about this shirt in a magazine about 3 years ago. It's a technical fabric constructed with phase change material embedded in it. It's stretch. It's based on an athletic fabric, and yet it's a dress shirt. Very curious. So I was really curious. I wanted to own this, see what it was like. So I contacted the company, a startup out of MIT, and I wasn't actually convinced that they could deliver a real product. They knew nothing about shirt making, and all they were saying is that when you go to your closet, you pick any one of our shirts, they match with any one of our pants, you never have to worry about what you're dressing. But that's not what I was interested in buying, was it? I wanted a shirt designed for travel. Nonetheless, I persevered. That was my problem. I didn't like their advertising, but I just said, okay, I'm going to order one anyway. And then I came to a real problem that their sizing was crazy. It didn't fit me. The neck size and the arm sizes that they had didn't conform to my body shape. So I contacted them. I said, so what do we do here? I said, oh, we'll pay for tailoring. You just move the collar button in a little bit. It's a few dollars. You send us the bill, and we'll give you the money back. It seemed like an interesting resolution I had never even considered was available. And then, so I ordered one shirt just to try it out. It didn't fit very well. The buttonholes were bad. Laser-cut buttonholes didn't work. And actually, the body size was too small for me. I felt like I was, like in a Superman outfit. I had stretched fabric, and it was horrible. So I sent it back. I had already confirmed that they would pay for return shipping. So that was really good. So I had nothing. Then they contacted me. So I returned it. They said, why don't you go to one of our stores and try some on? I said, I didn't know you had any stores. He said, oh, yeah, we have two. One in Boston, one in San Francisco. I went to the San Francisco store. I tried the shirt on. Because sizing was completely different than they had advertised. But I wanted to buy this shirt, right? I actually wanted 3 or 4 shirts like this because they have some special characteristics. They don't wrinkle. They have wicking fabric, so sweat spreads out, and they don't stink. And they have laser-cut armholes for ventilation. It's really interesting. So I bought 3 shirts in the store, but I was in San Francisco, and I didn't want to carry them around. I said, no problem. We'll ship them to your home. They'll be there when you get back. And they were there, and I have shirts, and I bought more. So they really helped me to buy. I want you to think of that concept. I wanted to buy something, but I had all these problems getting it to buy it. Next example. So I was the chief technology officer of a major company, ABB. We did automation equipment, and we visited with a team to steel mills that make rebar. You know what rebar is? It's reinforcing bar that's used in cement construction. And the factories in which these rebars are made are about 150 meters in length. You start with an ingot of steel, and you draw it down to something about this diameter through a series of rolls. Now, those rolls, 19 stations of drawing and rolling to get the pattern on the side. The only way to calibrate the machinery, and these red-hot steel or white-hot steel is rolling down there at like 10 meters per second, is people take a stick of wood and they put it on the moving band. They take the wood off, and then they measure what the diameter was. And they do this 19 times, and then they go and they calculate and adjust the machines. So it was pretty clear that someone wanted an automated way to do this. Okay? So we went back and thought about it. We had to figure out a question. Which companies would want this, and can we do this? So we did develop a technique that was called electromagnetic pulse interrogation. And at this point, we went beyond what the customer wanted. We had their curiosity their interest when we said, we could interrogate this moving red-hot piece of steel, determine the temperature profile within it and its diameter in a real-time basis at 19 rolling stands, and then develop the algorithm to control the whole plant. Can you actually do this, they would ask. Oh, yes, we've done similar things for other companies and other industries. Come and visit our research labs, go visit customers. We got their confidence at this point that ABB, Assea Brown Boveri, could do this. But then they told us their real problems. He said, when things go wrong in a plant like this, the steel is normally running, the rod is running in a straight line, but when something goes wrong, it starts to go up and up and up, and it covers the ceiling. And people can get wrapped up in this hot steel, and it destroys everything in its path if you're not careful. So what does that mean? That means that you have to make sure that your installation is completely armored against this disaster, should it happen. Okay, so that's one of the examples of a problem. We then said, it's a complicated problem, right? We'll test it out on one station. We'll build one machine, we'll do the station, but in the meantime, we'll build a whole algorithm and control system and see how this ties into your stick method with our empathy method. So we did that. We needed their cooperation. That's where we had to get them to buy, right? Up to this point, it was just all an idea. But they were reluctant. They run an operation. God forbid someone should interfere with their operation and shut down their production. So they actually had to allocate funds, time, people to help us do the installation, manage the data, and took a big risk to do that. We had to cause them to buy, right? So their objection, of course, was we'd have to shut down the plant. No, we don't. We'll install it at a regular shutdown period. We'll test it. We can test it by heating pieces of metal, putting them in here, and moving them in this test rig that we'll create. Don't worry about it. So we did that. We handled all the objections. They said, go ahead. We executed that, and we stayed in touch with them long time after, you know, for years, making sure that everything was working right. It's now employed in every rebar mill around the world. Next example. The grain boundary disruption technology. You may not know this, but you've imaginary developed this technology here at Argonne. You have the ability to disrupt rocks by interfering with the grain boundary adhesion mechanisms so that you can separate rocks into tiny little crystals that they exist, and therefore you can move through rock at a very rapid pace with a low energy. So this is an example of a technology push. You have ideas like this, the oleo sponge, for example, where if you created a technology, now you're trying to connect with people who value that application. So let's imagine grain boundary disruption technology. Where would you go with that? What would you do with it? Okay, so you'd certainly get people's curiosity up, and people would be reaching for you if you actually had this. You could move through rock for drilling operations, for tunneling operations, for excavation, for a number of military operations. I think you could go under enemy lines very deep. You could come up to the surface, etc. But can you actually do this? You would have to prove to your buyer, whoever that might be, that you had the technical know-how. You might have to have a demonstration. Just like the oleo sponge has a video, you might need to have several meters of rock with a probe that goes through, dust on the outside, and everything works. Then you'd find out the real problems. Again, like the empathy, the gauging of a rebar size, it might have to withstand certain environments, it might have to last for a certain period of time without refurbishment, etc. You really wait until a customer tells you about, the potential customer or sponsor tells you about their problems. You handle those with a resolution. I propose interchangeable parts or self-monitoring. You overcome that, and you have to ask one other question, right? What is that question? In all cases, do you have the money to support this, right? Is it worth it for you to support this type of work? I have experiences here and with other people where nobody asks. They're just talking about the technology and not necessarily asking if the individuals to whom they're talking have the money to support the work. All right, so I want to just reinforce a few key points here. I have about 15 minutes left. So KickProde is a mnemonic device that you should remember. Curiosity, interest, confidence, problem, resolution, objection, decision, exit, or execute. So everybody goes through this buying process. For everything else, your job is to help people to buy what they want, right? And sometimes to inform them of things that they can buy that they didn't know they could buy. The model is sequential. You can't move from one step to the next without resolving everything about that step. So once you have an objection, you have to go back and propose a resolution, for example. If they don't tell you their problems, They're real problems, whatever they are, interpersonal problems, organizational problems, they're being acquired or people are changing, then you're not going to make the sale. You need to get problems. Every time you hear a problem or an objection, you need to say thank you, because the person has revealed something to you that they were guarding. You've built up your confidence in them, and now they'll tell you what they're really thinking. That's what you want. So iterations are expected. In buying my shirt, I went through the whole process, bought the shirt, returned the shirt, right? So I went through again, all right? If you know where you are in the sales process, it's really, really valuable if you're working with other people. You know, people will start with curiosity, and you'll know together, oh yeah, they're on P. You know, so you know when people are on P problems to be quiet and listen, for sure. So you're not really selling. Scientists don't sell, right? Scientists help people to buy. Now, there are 4 key individuals, or maybe 5, in each selling situation. The buyer. The buyer is, there are 2 buyers for you. There's an economic buyer and a technical buyer. If you're a PI, you probably are dealing with the technical buyer first, who's going to vet your technical approach. If that's good, then you go on to the economic buyer. Ideally, both of them are together, because a lot of the communications between them is not verbal. It's just how they're reacting to you. Your behavior, the technical buyer's behavior, whether they think you're credible and actually can execute what you want. So you first have to sell to the technical buyer. If you sell to the economic buyer, you know, and then the technical buyer shoots you down, that's really embarrassing, right? So make the technical sale first, get that person on your side, then the 2 of you go together and talk to the economic buyer, who has the authority and the budget to execute, to pay for that work. Now, a coach is a very interesting arrangement in any relationship that you might have, and I know that you're beginning to formulate or to collect the set of relationships that you have externally with DOE and elsewhere. The coach is someone who's really on your side, who wants to make progress. You know, I suppose that many of you like to find the edge of what exists and to go beyond. Your coach is somebody like that, who wants to find the edge of what exists in their organization and be the one who helps people to go beyond that to accomplish the mission of the organization. So, and his self-interest is aligned with yours. If you can find somebody who's a coach, they don't buy, they're just somebody who you may know from university or from a prior experience together, who you like, who likes you, this is incredibly valuable in building a relationship. Now, a strategic person is somebody whose influence is really beyond that immediate situation. So, for example, when I was at ABB, as Chief Technology Officer, yes, I was responsible as an economic buyer with a technical team behind me, but I also had influence beyond the corporate research organization. I had peers in other organizations, you know, and I could say, well, those people who have the skill applying in this area could apply it somewhere else. And the strategic person has influence maybe with Suresh or Paul Kearns. They're also important people in this process, and I'll explain that for in a moment. The antagonist is clear. There's someone who feels threatened by your presence. So you have to do everything you can not to get antagonists. Sometimes they're unavoidable. But technically, you know, people may wish to question whether you're as good as they are, and they don't want to be undercut by your presence because they could do it internally, right? That's a problem. So the issue here is teaming. Who links to each person in a relationship, in a selling situation where you're helping this customer to buy? So normally, it would be a senior manager who has a large perspective, that links with the economic buyer. Be a technical lead that links with the technical buyer. The coach could be any of those. You don't know who it is. Whoever has that personal relationship and the inside edge, who's friendly with somebody there. It's a strategic person. When you get to a situation where you need some authority to say, yes, it's okay to do this, or yes, I not guarantee, I commit to try to deliver this. You know, it could even be your legal counsel here, or linking with legal counsel of another organization. They have a strategic overview. That's who you team together. And the antagonist, you need to talk to your coach about. I can't give you any advice on that one. So a few rules about your behavior. Qualify the prospect as early as possible and all the time. Qualify means asking if you have a budget. I know that there are people who in Argonne who have had 3 or 4 meetings with a potential sponsor, client, customer, whatever you wish to call it, and have never asked if they have the money to support the work. You have to do that up front. You know, and that's an outside organization. The same goes for DOE sponsorship. Do they have the funds to support this work? Otherwise, you have to look elsewhere for funding. And you keep on this requalifying as you continue becoming educated with them. And be sure to do that before you propose. This time of year, it's a little late in the year now, but usually around November, early November, is a great time to ask for funding because budgets are, companies have little time to spend those remaining millions of dollars on R&D, and they want to make a commitment quickly. So you should have had lots of work in process so that you can get through all the legal review before November and get contracts signed because they want to get that money spent, for sure. Now, when you do make a decision to propose, that means you're committing yourself. There's always a person who's responsible for closing the sale, for getting all the signatures done. You're committing yourself to an extraordinary level of effort. You need to decide that there's nothing that's more important than this. You will put in every amount of time away from home, of travel, of late-night revisions of a proposal or a presentation, that you'll go present the presentation multiple times to multiple groups if necessary, and convince yourself that this is, you know, an important thing to accomplish. One maxim that I like to remember is this simple one: proposal in the mail equals no sale, right? You can't just send a proposal to someone and expect them to sign it. It just doesn't happen realistically with any likelihood of success. So you always present that proposal in person so you can get the feedback and the final ultimate objections that will always occur so that you can refine the proposal and form a bond and a relationship with them, having been through a shared experience of figuring out how they can buy comfortably, right? Now, the other issue here is value pricing of the effort. I have seen statement of works here that where you look at the minimum amount of money that's required to get all the equipment and the work done, assuming everything goes right. Now, that's not a way to price a proposal. The price for industry is say, what is the value to the industry if this works in this time frame? Figure that out. Use your coach sometimes. How important is this? And never underestimate or estimate that you're going to have a perfectly run project, successful on every dimension every time. You have to build in some contingency funds. And maybe you need to put in enough money for the unknown unknowns. So a $1 million proposal is probably more realistically somewhere 1.75 or 2. So, a few things to sum up. Qualify, qualify, qualify. Every time you have a correspondence or a talk with the person who wants to buy something from you, whether it's you doing a technology push idea or them coming to you saying, we have this problem, can you help us resolve this? you have to ask, do you have the budget for this? What is your budget for this? How important is this problem? Why do you need this problem? What are your competitors doing? Understand who they're competing with scientifically and in a business sense, or strategically for government clients. The 80-20 rule is probably the most important thing for you to remember. 80% of the talking should be done by the people you're meeting with. I think Jason said nobody cares about your technology and how it works. They want to know how it works for them in their situation. Really, really important. So the grain boundary disruptor technology for building demolition, really quiet, right? No explosives, just take everything apart, for example. That's a completely different market. They want to know how it would work for them, right? And how long it would take to get that developed. So there's a word on this slide I'm going to come to. It's called rehearse. Every time I think of rehearsing a presentation, I drop the RE and I just look at this. I'm going to be mortified and dead if I don't prepare myself for this presentation, because the last word is hearse. So I don't understand how that word was derived, but it terrifies me. So think about that. Make sure that you understand what you're going to say. Don't overdo it. Don't read from a script, but understand what your key message is so that you can help the audience to buy the idea. At the end of a meeting, you have to take the responsibility for summarizing the actions, developing an action statement, who does what by when. That means you're in control of the situation. You circulate a draft to the people you met with. You say, is this what we agreed to? And the actions, I'll do my part, will you do yours? You get them to agree to it, and then you go on to the next steps. Finally, don't let your emotions get in the way. You might feel threatened by somebody telling you, no, I don't see that works, that formula is not right. Just don't rise to it. Just say thank you. Thank you for listening to what I have to do. We'll take a look at that later. Just keep calm, right? You'll get the technical challenges. You'll have to explain the risks, but don't get emotional about it. Don't feel that you're being threatened by someone questioning you. You've probably been through that in your careers for a PhD dissertation or in many classes. It doesn't feel good, but just keep your behavior under control. And the next point, really important, you're not competing with somebody who you're trying to sell your capability to. Just imagine that they're better than you, but they don't have the time to do what you can do, or the facilities or resources. So just put it in a different perspective. They really value you. They want you to help them to buy what you have. Otherwise, you would probably not be there. I think the other issues here are the objections. You have to be creative in responding to the objections. You have a very clear legal framework in which you can propose resolutions. So at Argonne, you really need to consult with your legal staff and other experienced people about what you can propose as a resolution. There's no guarantee of success, for example. There's no return of money, you know. There's no guarantee of time scale. You do your best efforts. And don't forget to close. So there are two lessons I want you to remember from this. First, you can definitely ask if a person that you're talking to has a budget, has money. And if you don't, you leave them feeling like floating. I mean, you don't respect me, you don't think I have any authority, I don't have the budget. Or you ask if they have a budget, what's the steps to get at it? What do I have to do to help you? And the last is, you will be more appreciated if you behave in this way. All right, thank you. That's my time. Questions? Good. No. Okay, thank you.
Right here.
Yeah.
My name is Alina Kassman. I actually went through cohort 1 of the Energy I-Corp, when at that time it was still called LabCorp. And big deal about the training was doing customer discovery, which is in some way pre-qualification of the product problem, the need, and the interest. So how does that tie in? How can we do that while selling?
Well, they're two different things. When you're doing customer, I think of it as two different things, okay? So when you're doing customer discovery, I would lead what I call study tours. I would go, in that case of the steel mill, we went to 15 different steel mills, and using a book called Customer Visits as a guide. So we would prepare in advance with a whole team of our side and a team of the other people. We would go through a formal process of understanding what they were questioning, and then immediately after we met with them, we would meet as our team and we would collect our results, formulate our theories about what they needed. Then we go to the next visit, and the next visit, and the next visit, all in one gigantic trip with no break, total immersion in the process. And at the end, we would formulate what we needed to do, testing all the way with different customers as we iterated closer towards a reasonable solution. So that's the discovering what to make or what to do or what to buy, what to help people to buy. That's not the same as selling the solution that you finally have, okay? Because that is the result of the R&D effort where you actually develop something. So I think the customer discovery is finding what to work on. So yeah, you have to do that first, and it's not helping people to buy. It's not selling.
So
it's discovering.
But in case of Argonne PI, we have developed certain technology, and we think it's going to solve a certain problem.
Right.
So the customer discovery process then helps us fine-tune our solution to actually solve their problem.
That's because you have come up with an idea on your own. That's the technology push model. We've made a discovery, we think it's applicable. So now you have to discover if it really is. The other way around is that you go and visit customers, you discover what their real issues are, and then you find the area in which a breakthrough is needed, and then you propose to the right customer, yeah, I could work on that. I have the capability to deliver a solution to that. Will you fund me to do that? So there are two different approaches. They both end up in scientific, technical work, but one's before you know the real problem that you're solving, and one's after.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
So I have a question there. It's kind of on the other side. Argonne has huge amounts of technology, but it's not always clear exactly what we have to sell. Do you have advice about how you identify exactly, what we can really deliver?
Yeah, I have some comments, maybe not necessarily advice. But when you have technology that's sitting on the shelf, ready for use or ready for potential application, it's a real creative challenge to figure out what problem it's solving. And so I like what's done with some of your technology here. You just put it out there, like the oleo sponge, right? It's a technical capability that has potentially hundreds of different applications, but you don't know where. So you put it out, you broadcast it, and some people come back and they say, I could use that in my area. You never knew what that application is. The other approach is really to collect some people who have a broad area of knowledge about various industries and can think creatively together, and you brainstorm it multiple times. You come up with a list of potential applications. You winnow that list down through discussions or desk research, seeing what you're competing with, and finally you may discover something that's really useful. I've done hundreds of projects like that, some successful, some not. It's difficult.
Thanks.
You have something in mind specifically?
No, the issue we run into sometimes is we have great capabilities, but the people who are doing it are 100% busy already. And
Right.
so that sometimes, you know, even when you have the demand externally, it's a little hard to figure out what you can deliver internally.
I mean, I used to do that for a living way back when I was a innovation consultant. Company would come to me with excess technology ideas and said, can you find a use for this? And so we would just run a series of concept generation sessions. Because the companies are not staffed to do that. Neither is Argonne,
right.
as you point out. So you need an external resource. It only takes an hour or so with the right people, repeated multiple times. You get a whole list and you winnow it down. And there are services that'll do that for you. All right. Yeah. One more. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you won't always be lucky enough to find one. Okay, first of all, one tip is that if you've ever worked for an organization before and then the assignment's over, go back. Find the person who you liked working with the most and go back and talk to them about what else could we do for your organization. Right? Or if someone who you've worked with has left that organization, you never work for companies or organizations. I just want to drive this home. We all work with people, and that relationship between the people is the most important thing. When I was a consultant, my clients, the people I work with, my coach or whatever, would go from one company to another. I always went with them. They always brought me in. Or my organization. So you stop thinking about the sponsors, who are the people who pay you as organizations. They're people who want you to deliver them success. So that's my tips. You must have somebody in mind. Yeah, okay, good. All right, so that's enough about the behavioral ideas. You have to think about your behavior and how you get to the edge of discovery and get somebody to pay you to be there. Good luck.